and welcome to today's webinar titled Time Savings Techniques for Detailing Reinforcement in Above-Grade Structures. Our speaker today is Dave Brewster, Allplan's reinforcement and fabrication technology expert. Today's webinar builds on the webinar which we held in June titled Advanced Reinforcement Detailing Below-Grade Foundations.
For those of you who are familiar, not familiar with me, my name is Dave Brewster. I'm the business development manager here for fabrication and rebar in North America. My experience dates back for quite some time. I have over close to over 20 years now of rebar detailing experience, both self-employed and with Harris Rebar. I'm sure most of you have heard of Harris Rebar as a company. In those 20 years, I have 4.5 years of PT detailing experience. I have a vast experience of CAD knowledge to begin with, over 30 years. Of those 30 years, 25 of those have been in the 3D modeling experience. So I have a fair bit of background when it comes to software. I also have a construction background, which kind of lends very well into the software. So when we talk about above grade structures, what I'm really talking about is elevated slabs, columns, walls that really are out of the footing stage and out of the foundation stage. So what I've really concentrated on in this particular webinar is taking a particular slab and the elements of that slab. I've got a couple columns I'm going to throw in. I've got some walls. I've got a slab where we're going to do certain things with the slab. First portion, we're going to talk about concreting the slab, making the actual concrete model, which then in turn, we are going to start to reinforce using some of the reinforcing techniques that are available in Allplan software. So what I've done with the day and age and technology and everyone working from home, the actual demonstration is a pre-recorded demonstration, so I'll have the ability to pause if need be along the way, but I will be talking it through with what you're actually seeing. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. So with what you can see here, the drawing in front of you, this is an AutoCAD drawing file that's been brought in. It's a series of polylines and lines and text and columns. And what we're actually doing is we're going to build off of that, and we're actually going to build our concrete from these polylines. Now, Allplan has a set of tools built in which we can build slabs, columns, walls. We have recessed openings and so on, and allows us to define information about each one of those elements. The first element here is a slab element. With this particular tool, we can define where the bottom of that slab needs to go in elevation as well as the thickness. You can see here I've got an elevation point of approximately 36 feet, and the thickness of that slab is going to be 1 foot thickness. So with this particular tool, what I can do is I can actually select on the polyline, and it's going to start tracing around that, and I can select the second polyline, and instantaneously I now have a slab built off of selecting those polylines. I don't have to click points in order to get that. I can select existing polylines. I'm going to boot over into a 3D mode here so you can start to see what we're looking at in 3D. So you can see here we do have some recesses and openings and whatnot. With our opening tool, I can simply select the slab, and by selecting on the opening polyline, very quickly I can put holes into the slab. So you can see up there in the 3D mode that I do have these openings instantly. Again, using tools that are already available, or excuse me, predefined lines that are already been developed. So a couple other things we do have here is we do have a recess, which is your upper green rectangular area. And we also have a little step in the slab, which sort of lends to almost incorporating a beam in there as well. So this next portion, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define the recess as well as the step in the slab, and I'm going to work off of what's existing. And the tool I'm going to use here is what we call our extrude tool. With the extrude tool, we can use existing faces on our 3D objects in order to enhance that 3D object. What I've done here in the projection view is I sort of zoomed up to underneath because I'm going to need to look at the bottom face as well as the top face of this 3D object. you'll notice as I'm zooming around here, just to show you, as I move around, it's telling me which face my extrusion is going to start on. So in this particular case, I'm going to put my extrusion, I'm going to create my step on the bottom of this first. So I'm going to select the bottom face of this 3D object. And then by simply picking on points on my polyline, it now knows I want an extrusion. If you see green, it's going to add to the bulk of that concrete. If I go red, it's going to subtract from the bulk of the concrete. So the first portion I've created this step I've added. Now I'm going to recess this portion and I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to make sure it's red and I'm going to type in minus a foot. You can very quickly see here now, I have a step in my concrete. What I'm going to do with this other rectangle, use the exact same mode, and I'm going to put a recess in here. I'm going to put about a 2-inch recess, again, by picking on points of the concrete, and then typing in the negative value, a negative 2 inches, in order to put in a 2-inch recess. So in a matter of a few seconds, or excuse me, a few minutes, we have developed this piece of concrete which will allow us to put in rebar. If you're familiar with our workflow here in Allplan, is we really emphasize the fact we are a 2D to 3D workflow. I did all my work in the 2D mode to create the concrete, and my 3D model was generated. Same is going to come into play when we start doing our reinforcing. So what we're doing is we're setting this up. So in the next portion here, we have a couple other things I'm going to add, and we're going to talk about putting walls in. We have a simple wall around our staircase over here. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to change our drawing file to the wall concrete. And drawing files allow us to segregate our information within our project. So I'm going to set some parameters here. I know the bottom of the wall has to be at the same elevation as the top of my concrete. So I'm going to load in some pre-specified parameters. I have a 10-foot wall. I can adjust how the orientation is when I'm putting the wall in. And I'm going to simply click around and add walls to the points that exist here. One of the things you'll notice here is my 2 side walls are actually a little thicker than they needed to be. So I can highlight one of these, bring up the properties of that wall, and I can bring in a style. I've already predefined a style of an 8-inch concrete wall, and very quickly I can change the style of a wall by bringing in a predefined 8-inch concrete wall, and I'm going to adjust those two. So now you can see I've got 2 10-inch walls and an 8-inch wall. These are very quick modeling techniques that we have built into our software, so we can generate concrete models relatively quickly. On the one end here, you can see I require an opening. Again, all parameterized, what information we can add to these openings. So I'm just going to define a couple of pre-defaults. I'm going to pick the location of my opening. I'm then going to define the size of my opening, pick the opposite point of my size. Accept that as my 3'3" opening, and then I'm going to define the width of this, and I'm going to specify I need it to go all the way through. So pick the width there. I now have an opening. And again, with these predefined tools, it's very quick and very easy to generate your concrete model. So with this concrete model now, we are now able to start generating our reinforcing, but we need some columns. So we're going to do a 2-in-1 tool here. First of all, I'm going to show you how you can very quickly create a concrete column using our column command. And then the same fact, the next step after that, I'm going to show you how we can quickly get some rebar using our Python parts tool to generate stirrups and ties and verticals inside of our column. So I'm going to go ahead and start the column. Again, set up my predefinitions for height of the column. I can have different sizes of column. I can have rectangular. I can specify widths. You can see here I've got different shapes of columns, but I'm going to go ahead and pick this one here, which is basically, I don't know what the shape of my column is going to be, and I did this on purpose because I'm going to select on existing line work and very quickly turn that line work into a column. So simply double clicking on that line work twice, and I now have a column at the exact elevation, at the exact height I want. So I'm just going to do it to a couple more here to generate the concrete. So now that I've generated the concrete, you can see how quick and easy, if you have existing line work, it is to create this. We do have information about the concrete. We have properties about that. So if you want to define a specific name for that concrete. We can go ahead and change the object name of that concrete. Now it's a column. We can call it C1, for example. So when we generate reports going forward, we would have the ability to see how many C1s we have in our in this particular floor, or in the model in general, or our whole project. So the first portion that we're going to do here is we're going to add some reinforcing to the column. Since it was the last thing we just created, let's just go ahead and add some rebar into that. Again, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my drawing file that I'm going to be working with. And with that drawing file, again, it allows me to segregate information, allows me to hide, and so on. So I'm going to go in here and start the Python part for column rebar. A lot of information in here, but essentially what it is we can change ties, tie space, and so on. I've already set up a predefined arrangement that allows me to have 3 different stirrup areas, allows me to have crank verticals with a specific lap at the top of the vertical. I can have ties that crisscross my internal ties, which are T9 shapes. It allows me to define all this. Again, define it ahead of time so I can very quickly show you how it goes in. So in animation mode here, you can see a pretty picture of concrete with my rebar sticking out. You can go back to wireframe mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this. I'm going to do a couple more columns here with the exact same Python part. And I'm going to add it to a couple more columns here. The idea of a Python part is the Python part allows us to do a mass amount of techniques in one go. So if you think about it in the case of what you're used to doing, you would generate your tie separately, your vertical separately, your side T9 separately, and so on. What this allows us to do is all in one shot, and it's re-editable. It means that anytime I can go in there and edit anything about that, and it'll reassign the rebar accordingly. So you can see for this smaller one, I've gone ahead and I've just put in just 4 crank bars in the corners and kept the same tie configuration. So what we're going to look at here next is now we want to start reinforcing our slab. In order for Allplan to do its magic and do everything that excites me about the software, is we work with what we call drawing views. Our 2D to 3D workflow is huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some sections through the slab, and I'm going to generate one section. I'm going to show you a really a tool that, to me, it's very exciting to use, because I can generate one section. Because we had the concrete model once, I'm going to use our simple 2D based copy command. And when I copy a section, you're going to notice as I'm copying a section, it's going to change the section designation, as well as it's going to change my section view of what is appearing in that section. So I'm going to copy this a few times. So I designated base point. I want one to cut through this particular opening. And you'll notice again, as I drop it, the section cut is going to appear different. I'm going to drop another section cut's going to appear different. And then I'm going to drop one more. And again, you'll notice as I'm drawing this in, each one of those sections is updating according to that cut. And it's giving it a new designation, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Very, very powerful. It's a very unique tool. Kind of blows my mind how they actually do this, but that's to me, that there in itself is a time-saving technique. The amount of time you would need to generate those sections individually would take some time. Next thing I'm doing here is I'm generating a plan view of that slab. Again, 2D to 3D workflow, what we require is when we shape bars and put bars in, we generally have to specify a shape, and we have to specify what we call a range of rebar. And in order to do that, we work with a couple different views. Shape it in one, place it in another. The magic of Allplan puts it into the 3D model exactly where it needs to be, and you're detailing at the same time. All very, very powerful. So with this, you'll notice when I was dropping in those views, I changed my drawing files to the views. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in the bottom layers of my rebar. Now this tool, if you joined us in the previous webinar, this tool I used before, but just very basic. And it's this tool is called the area reinforcement tool. Okay. So with this area reinforcement tool, previously we didn't worry about openings, we didn't worry about anything, but in this particular case, we're going to worry about openings. One of the first things I did is I changed the layer, and you'll see where this layering comes into play. of the where the rebar is actually going to be placed. First thing I did is I defined where my outside of my slab needs to be. Now what I'm doing is I'm defining the openings by picking internal points inside these openings. Allplan recognizes this. I have to define in Allplan, it needs to know how high up in the air do I want to do this. I'm going to apply it at 36 feet. And then the thickness of my slab. This all pertains to the tool and is what makes it more enhanced. Some of the things I can change here, the bar size, my lap location, my lap size. I have to specify, do I want all the bars to be different marks, which 99% of the time we do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you can see in my plan view, all the bars are there, trimmed around the opening. It's got the information. As you progress through this tool, it's going to allow you to place range lines, and it's going to allow you to place dimensions and labels for those. Now, it'll walk you through this whole thing and get you right to the end. Now, at this point here, you're going to see the video is going to stop and start in the next portion, because just like that, I'm going to do a quick pause here so I can explain. That tool would walk me right to the end of what you're seeing there. It would allow you to go to each one, specify your range, specify your bar label for that range, and by the time it's probably another minute and a half, and you basically have that whole plan. The next portion of this tool allows me to do the corresponding layer in the opposite direction. And some of the things to look at when this tool is being placed is look at the automatic layering, the automatic offset. It takes the same outlines into account, the same opening. And one of the things I do change is what layer it goes on to. Again, when we get to that point in the video, you'll see why this is important to have it on a different layer. So I put it on bottom layer 2. I go ahead and I match the rebar. By matching the rebar, it says, oh, I'm going to use the same information. You'll notice the cover has changed. And when we zoom in on one of the section views, you'll see that all the bars are in the proper location. Again, by changing that arrow, specifying some more parameters, specifying different bar marks, and clicking, now it goes through, and now I'm placing in the other direction. Again, video is going to cut short here. Basically, you're going to go ahead and place all your dimensions, place all your labels for those dimensions, and you can very, very quickly, in a matter of start to finish, you could have 2 layers set out. So again, in this particular view, what you're seeing is the progression of that tool to get you from the time you place your polygon, your placing polygon, to the time you place all your labels. So what it's done is placed both layers inside of one viewport. The next portion, I'm going to show you how you can copy that viewport and adjust your layer settings so you can only see what layering of rebar you want in each one of those views. And it's going to be done with a simple copy command and modifying the properties of that view. So here again, simple copy. You'll notice the properties of this by double clicking on the viewport. I can change what layers are affected in each one of those views. So those ones I'm seeing the bottom lower layer. This one's in this view here. I want to see the bottom upper layer. Okay. Allows you to segregate. And again, at that same time, what you're doing is you're detailing. So you're setting this up to be ready for a detail page to throw on any layout that you want. And at the same time, again, as we get into some of the more tools, in the back of your mind, this is all being built in 3D. The tool, the inherent part of this tool is you're building information in 2D, and all the while you're building a 3D model. Now, I don't pan out to that because I want you to get used to our workflow, is when we get into some other tools, you'll see how using the tools, it generates a 3D object. So in a case like this, now, what about our top layers? Our top layers, similar thing. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of the viewports, I'm gonna copy it up, but our top layer has this depression in there. It has the same openings, but now we have a depression we need to worry about. So I'm gonna show you how you can modify the placing polygram to add another opening, therefore trimming the bars accordingly to that. So again, I'm gonna start the tool, change the layering I want the bar on, and then start the tool and do a match. And by doing a match, in this case, some information I have to change. By matching it, knows the thickness of the concrete. I have to change where my cover is applied. And here's where I'm going to add a new opening. I now need to add that depression because the rebar is, if I do a 1-inch cover, it's not going to work if I don't pick that. So now I've added depression for my top bars. Now, because I want them to be oriented the same as my bottom, I got to rotate the bars. You'll see 90 degrees here. Now I can proceed with the tool as I did with the bottom 2 layers, laying it out, making sure bar marks are segregated, doing all information, laying it out from start to end, position, place, drop your dimension, place it, and then you're done. So really from a start to finish aspect of this, you could have all 4 layers laid out with all your openings in probably 15 minutes, not even 15 minutes top. The beauty of this particular tool is at any time I can go back into that tool and modify spacing for the whole mat. I can change the size of bar for the whole mat, but I also can change it individually for each one of those ranges that apply. As a general rule, it's being placed as a mat, therefore you try and modify it all as a mat, but we do give you the ability to, we're not forcing you to stay inside of that so on. So again, here you can see I'm just modifying some of the bars very quickly, changing that. And again, you'll see I don't really do a lot of labeling here because it's just a monotonous thing. So I just want to show you the ability to change all your bars from a multi-display to a single display for the bars. Okay. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm showing you after the fact is you don't have to go follow through your tool to apply your dimension. Is, well, what if I just would want to do it afterwards and I want to align the tool quicker? You can do it after the fact. So as we've seen with other softwares where we're basically start to finish, you have to do this, label the bar, place the bar. We allow you to do all your placing and label and dimension how you want afterwards. And we don't define what that label needs to look like in each one of those views at the time you're creating your bar. So that was just to give you an idea of how you can do it after the fact and not while inside the tool. Okay. Again, next thing we're going to do here is just show you how we take that one and we're going to do the bars in the opposite direction with this particular tool, change the layering and do a match. And by doing the match, you'll notice the cover is going to adjust from the top. Okay, we go ahead and we match it, check everything, make sure everything's exactly the way we want it. Come back, change that's your 30-inch for your lap, and go ahead and define it. Again, walk you through placing it and so on. So these 4 details represent 4 different layers, which could be representative on 4 different drawings if required. So Allplan allows you to do to be very detail oriented. At the same time you're generating the bar, and at the same time you're defining your 3D bar here. And again, the surprise is going to happen. You think you're working in 2D here. I'm going to show you the quote unquote surprise is going to happen when I show you what you're actually creating and this 3D pops up here. So in this next portion here, what we're going to talk about is we do have beams. Okay, it's quote unquote it's a beam, it's a step in the slab. So what we're going to do is create a couple more views here where we're actually going to pop in the beam bars. Okay, now we do have a beam Python part, we do have that, but I'm going to show you a couple neat little techniques we have with putting in reinforcing your ties and then aligning your vertical bars within that tie. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating another plan view, and I'm telling it what I want to see in that plan view even before I drop the plan. Okay, so here I've got a plan view. And by doing that with the original one, I can now cut a section of my quote unquote section, and it's going to inherit the same properties of that section I've done. So again, all this stuff, these time-saving techniques, now think of you trying to redraw this, draw that, then draw a section according to what you just drawn, all in 2D, okay? So you now have the ability of, once you've drawn, I have done nothing else with the concrete part, but I'm able to generate, if I want to draw 100 sections through this, I can do it in no time flat. So that's the power of our software, is we can do that all from a single quote unquote model. Just if you, again, think about the time savings it would take you to redraw all that. So now what I've done here is I'm going to apply the beam bar, okay? And I'm going to use 2 plan views because, again, with our workflow, we don't need to, but it's unique for us to work with 2 different. We shape it in one and we place it in another. That is the power of our software to get it in its proper 3D location in the 3D model. So I'm going to change to the beam rebar drawing file. Again, I'm segregating as we go. I'm now going to pop in what we call our, if you're familiar with it, it's our T1 tie. So our T1 tie allows me to pick opposite corners of our tie, and then I can specify which corner I need my hook to be in. By picking up in that corner, my hook is automatically going to appear there. I can adjust covers for each one of these with visually in this particular view. Okay, I'm going to adjust the top cover by 1.5 inches and maintain the bottom 1 inch. Each one of it can have their own covers. By specifying that, here's where labels start to come into play. You can label as you go with this tool as well, or you can label after the fact. In this particular one, I'm going to label a few of them as we go, and then some of them I'm just going to leave blank and we can worry about labeling afterwards. I've shaped it in one view, and you notice there in the plan view, I placed it. I said, where does this range need to be? And by hitting the align tool, it throws it into the concrete at its proper location. Go ahead and place my range line for the ties, and now I'm going to place the label for that. If I want to rotate the label, I can simply click on a horizontal line of any sort and will automatically rotate that label if I wanted it to. Or if I want to flip it back vertical, I click on a vertical line. Our labels are intuitive that way. So one of the things I'm going to show you here is now I'm going to place the verticals. In this next portion here, notice that I'm placing the bar as what we call our section view, our dot view. But I'm also going to use our length tool, our measure tool, to copy paste information into. So if I don't know how long a particular segment of concrete is, I can use the measure tool and I can then inherit that information into anywhere I want and use that. And then you'll also see me using some arithmetic equations to get the proper length of the bar. So when I put it in section mode, it needs to know the length of the bar I actually want to create. Well, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I do have concrete. So I'm going to show you how we use that. So I'm going to go ahead and start my measure command. So here I'm going to place, you see as I do section, it's allowing me to place the bar right inside the tie at the proper location. I need to know the length of this. So I'm going to use my measure tool. It tells me at 27'5". I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this number. I'm going to paste it in the bar length, and then I'm going to add 24 inches each end. So I'm going to go 2 times 2 feet. You'll notice just by doing that, it's now going to tell me I have a bar length of 31'5". Perfect. Okay. Now I need to make sure it's 2 foot properly on either end. So after I place the label, I'm going to make sure when I place my range, it's centered to this beam. So by centering the beam, centering its location and placing the range, it now knows I'm going to do a 2 foot protrusion or 2 foot embedment to either end of that. Okay. And then it's going to make sure it's in the proper location. It's going to walk me through, okay, what's your range, place my dimension, place my label, and so on. That's what it allows me to do. So you can see there in the bottom, I do need to adjust cover. Again, if you want it to be grammatically perfect for everything, you can adjust the cover. You can see it squeezes them in, 2 inches on either end, works perfectly. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in. Here, if you want to place it as a range line, sometimes when you do bars like that, you don't necessarily have to place it as a range line, so you don't have to place it like that. So I chose not to show a label here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the top bars in this beam with the same functionality. I'm going to place place it as a section, change the size, paste in the number again. I don't have to remeasure because I didn't copy anything else. Paste it in and put in a different calculation, 2 times. This one happens to be, I believe I did 30 inches. Now it's a 32'5" bar. Now when I go to place the range, I don't have to pick points. I can inherit the properties of that. And I'm going to use my eyedropper here. I'm going to inherit the properties of that top range. It automatically brings in everything. You can see the cover is the same. I'm now going to adjust the number of bars to 4. And now I've got my top bars in. Again, proceed through. You can label as such. You can do it now. You can do it afterwards. Nothing's set in stone. Do the same thing for my sidebars. I got 2 sidebars. Now here I can snap right to the midpoint. It knows it's the midpoint. I'm going to snap to the midpoint, change the size, and again inherit the properties of the other one. So I know the range is the same. I know where the outside area is my bar. I'm going to inherit the properties of that. I have 18-inch cover or 18-inch development on either end of this, plus 2 times 18 inches. It now calculates the proper size length of the bar that needs to be. apply a label, and apply the area in which it needs to go into. Okay. So with this, very quickly you can use existing information. You don't have to have the calculator handy. You don't have to have that information. You don't have to know how far to offset those bars in order to get those bars in proper location. That particular tool looks for the inside of your tie, for example, and I'll put it there. If I was floating on the outside of the tie, I would put the bar on the outside of the tie. So very intuitive piece of getting in bars. Now again, I could very easily have used we do have some beam tools that we could use, and we could use it for that. I just wanted to show you this particular tool of using the straight bar with the length functionality. Being a CAD-based program, remember, we have all these CAD tools available to us. You see me use the copy. You see me use the move command. Next, I'm going to actually mirror this set of bars onto the side because it's going to have essentially the same configuration. And then I'm going to adjust the range of those bars. I'm going to adjust the length of those bars. I'm going to use a couple techniques to do that. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and so for this one, I just chose to put the label more vertical than horizontal. So I'm just applying a couple other labels here for this. You'll see here I'm picking some predefined text instead of being a bottom. It's a set of ties. So you can pick for your labels. You can select some predefined text that are already in there. I'm going to go ahead and apply a label to the outside. This one here happens to be top bars. And I'm going to apply a label to the bottom bars. I'm going to label all this. So you can see when I do the mirror, the labels will go with that. Now they'll maintain the orientation to the bar, so they might be turned 90 degrees. And in some cases, it's okay. Sometimes you might just have to rotate them 90 and everything else will follow your arrows and so on. So now that I've got these labels in, let's go ahead and start the mirror functionality here. Okay. So I'm going to do a copy mirror. And then I did accidentally I selected the arrow for that, but that's okay. It doesn't go with it because I didn't pick both and it's not really part of, it has to be picked as a whole. So when I do a mirror command here, notice I picked opposite corners, it pops it in. The number 5 doesn't show up because it's technically not part of that. So you'll notice here that the range is out of line. So for those ties, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that tie, pick on the bar, and just by using direct modification, I can select exactly where that new range goes. And number of ties updates, if you maintain the spacing, you'll notice there I can change spacing number. For the next one here, well, what about on my verticals? A couple different ways. I mean, we can use a stretch command on all of them. I'm going to show you one of our neat tools here, which is called the trim bars command. And with the trim bars command, I'm going to trim all these bars in one shot according to that line work that already exists. So we're going to go ahead and select the bars we want to trim. Pick 2 points on which we want to trim this. And go ahead and select that. Now, one of the things you'll notice with our particular software, what it does is now knows it's trimmed all those bars. It doesn't know what you want to do with the ranges. So what it's done is it showed all the bars again. We're going to convert that back to single bars. But very quickly, you can see there, it split that bar into 2. I just picked the side it didn't need anymore, and it's gone. Now think about the functionality here is that particular tool, if I needed to place and split bars and throw a coupler on either one of those, we have that. We do have coupler functionality built into our software, so I could have used that tool, but that's similar to that. But in this case, I would need to get rid of the bars. That's why I did a split. So now what we're going to do is now you can see that they're at the edge of the concrete. I'm going to change the display of these bars back to single display, and then I'm going to use my stretch command to stretch all 3 of those into a 2-inch cover. So right now I split them at the face of the concrete. If I had a line, I could actually have tracked the line over 2 inches and split them 2 inches from there. This is just, I want to show you the CAD functionality of our software and how quick we can do this. And now I'm going to track over in the X direction. I'm going to do a 2-inch cover. You can see what tracking is here. It's an implied tracking. That little blue dot represents that. So now what I'm going to do is, now that I have it, I'm going to put in a 2-inch cover. So you can see here how very quickly you can get bars, and then I can choose to mirror that over to get to the other ones on the other side. I could do a mirror command. I can do it in my section view. I can do it in my plan view. One thing I do want you to realize is I copied it and I mirrored it in my plan view. You'll notice that the section view here automatically adds it to that. all views are connected. You are looking at one view, and whatever you do in one and they're all connected, it appears in all the other ones. So my 3D models appears in the proper location, as well as all my bars, all my drawings, everything updates. What I'm going to do for this next portion, I've got a lower slab here. I want to apply some bars. I'm not going to use my area reinforcement tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just do some general straight bars, pop them in the bottom of there, because I'm doing this with the purpose in mind. Is I could use the area reinforcement tool, which is fine, but I'm going to pop these in, and then we get a notification from the contractor. Contractor wants to add an opening in this lower slab, so I'm kind of setting that up for this. So what I'm doing is I'm adjusting some cover for the bottom bar. I'm going to pop it in here. Once I pop it in, again, place it, or excuse me, you're going to shape it, and now I'm going to place it. I know my range needs to go from here to here, and I'm going to show all the bars. I'm not going to worry about dividing. I'm not worried about detailing it yet. I just need to get it in so I can do work with it. So I place the bottom bars in the east-west direction. Now I'm going to place the bars in the north-south direction. Okay, again, labels, not worried about them at this point. So now I'm going to go ahead and again, you'll notice I'm doing different sections. First drawn bar I did in the one section, now the opposite one I'm going to draw in the other one. I'll zoom in here and you'll notice the bar is lower than it needs to be. I can adjust cover here, or I can move the bar after the fact and move it up exactly, the spacing of the bar, which is 0.625 inches. Again, ignore the labels at this particular point. And I'm going to place this. Okay. So I got all the bars in here. So you can see I've got this. Now again, using CAD functionality of our software, I don't have to redraw these. I can do my copy command. And again, you'll notice there, and that's now that I have the 3D open, as I'm doing this information is showing up in 3D, I'm going to copy around a midpoint, an implied midpoint, by using our intuitive tracking. And I can mirror those up instantaneously like that. It's created all my layers over to here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a second. I really want to emphasize the fact of this 2D CAD workflow. There's nothing here that no one has been used to for the last 30 years on how to actually use a software than what you're doing. Especially when it comes to rebar and doing all that, using our 2D CAD functionality, and look what you're getting in your isometric view over there. The software has been designed and has been smart like this forever, and it's just, to me, it's what really drew me to the software. Is think about what's happening is I haven't seen any software previously do this. It's just very, very smart. So using your CAD functionality and just by copying mirror, and all of a sudden magically it shows up over there. I don't have to go into my 3D model and try and pick on some imaginary line or draw any construction lines to get bars into a certain location. I have 2D information already. Why not use that? That's what our software is doing. So now, as I said, the contractor was called up. He says, you know what, Dave, sorry about this. It's either, I got a crane opening going in, or I have an opening in this slab. What can I do? Well, if it was the area reinforcement tool, I would have the ability to add the opening after the fact. But because this is our general tool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I showed you the trim bars command is trimming on a line. I'm going to show you how we trim to an opening, all 4 layers of steel in one shot. It's one of the very rare instances I have seen a software do this. I've seen other softwares try and attempt this, but this is on general rebar. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm creating that concrete opening. Okay. Create the concrete opening. I might have specifications at this point. I don't care. I just want a concrete opening. I do a negative value. I now have the opening in concrete. I'm going to show you having an opening in the concrete. You can see my bars are going right through this opening. I don't want that to happen. So what I want to do is I want to trim those bars, but I want to trim them all in one shot. Okay. And I want to define new ranges for each one of those. I don't want to do anything differently. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is start that trim bars command again, one that I showed you for the length of those the top and bottom bars in the beam. We're going to use it again, but we're going to use it on the mat here. This time, you'll notice this time here, I'm going to choose what we call an opening as opposed to a split. And then I'm going to choose the polygon command, or basically if I had the ability to select internal to an object, it's similar as picking island detection and so on. This time that's how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do a 1.5 inch basically offset trim around that opening, so when my bars get trimmed, they have a cover. So by applying the opening, I'm going to select the bars I want to trim. I'm going to select the opposite corners of my opening, and instantaneously it has trimmed all 4 layers of rebar, dedicated different rebar ranges for all of those, and has put them in. Now, just to show you another functionality tool we have is they called back and said, oh, then it's really strange, but they called back and said, Dave, my north-south bars, I don't know why, but they don't want them trimmed. They want them to be a single bar. I'm going to show you the join bars command, which will join my top and bottom bars in my north-south direction back together. I'm going to go ahead and select the ends just like this, and just by clicking on that, those are now long bars. Again, we have split bars and join bars. These are very unique tools. Again, very, very slick. So what I did, I just undid them to this point. Now, we talked about, these are sort of our, I want to call them our quote unquote manual ways of putting in. The area reinforcement is not necessarily manual, it's more of an enhanced manual, but we did talk about Python parts, and as in the previous one, I did the rebar round opening. I'm going to do it again in this one, just people who haven't seen it. I'm going to show you, okay, now I need some trimmer bars around this opening, so we're going to use what we call our Python parts to do this. So I'm going to just adjust a couple of views here, zoom in on that opening so you can see what happens. And the best part about what I show you with these drawing files and segregating is I can turn off bars just by hiding them, by turning off this eyeball. So I'm going to turn off the top and bottom layers. Again, making the drawing file additional bars current. Turn off the top and bottom layers so you don't see clutter here as I'm putting the bars in. Again, just like that, the drawing files are turned off. And I'm going to start this, what we call enclosed reinforcement or open reinforcement tool. A lot of information here. Again, what I've done is I've preloaded in some information I've already set. You can see here it's adjusted stirrups. I can adjust stirrup openings or the type of stirrup. If it's open, it's got hooks. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back to open stirrups to show it change. Take the hook off of it. And notice as I hover over the opening, on whatever side I hover, it's going to apply the bars. So I'm going to pick on that. Just by selecting on that, I now have instantaneously have bars all around that opening. I can adjust the spacing, adjust the size. So here's where the power of this tool is. Okay, we can adjust each side individually. Okay, if we wanted. So north south might have a different, and so on. Let's say I pop this in and put it all in one, and I just realized I messed something up. With our Python parts tool, we can go back in simply by double clicking on the Python part. It'll relaunch the tool, and we can make changes there. And as we make the changes, it'll go back. It'll make the changes reflective upon close. So what we've done, and again, what it's also done is wherever we applied it in here, every viewport that you've done, whether it's a section view, plan view, wherever, and as long as it's turned on in that particular viewport and not on that layer, it's going to show up in those views. That is the connectivity of our software. There is no disconnect. Once an update is done in one location, it's project-wide if it's in those particular viewports, okay? So the last thing we're going to wrap up here with is we have this information. We have this now, typical slabs. This happens to be level 2. The next thing I'm going to show you is I have this exact same slab for level 3, okay? But I need the same drawing files, I need the same information. So, sometimes on the layouts, you would just say, yeah, level 2 and level 3 typical, et cetera, et cetera. But from a standpoint of being a project-driven software, you want to have individual bars. You don't want to do a 2 times on a layout. You physically need to create those bars again, okay? And maybe you want to do the drawings. Maybe you need to tweak a little bit on the 3rd floor. I'm going to show you how very quickly you can take this whole thing, all those drawing files from level 2, bring them up to level 3, put them at the proper location in a matter of, we got 2.5 minutes left here, show you in 2.5 minutes how you can get level 3 ready instantaneously from level 2, which is already done. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch my drawing files, okay? As I've stated to you already, what the drawing files are is a way of segregating your project, okay? So we can see here we have level 1, level 2. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a new structural level. I'm gonna add a new story, and I'm gonna rename that story to level 3, okay? So once I rename it, okay, what I do now is I go down to my level 2, I take all of these drawing files, I copy, I go up to level 3 and I do what we call paste under. Under the paste under, it knows I can't use the same drawing file names because everything has to be unique. I'm gonna start at 309. So at 309, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna copy them all in. Takes the exact same information from level 2, rename them level 3 through 9. I'm only gonna do it on a couple, but I rename level 2 to level 3 concrete, level, each one of these can be renamed to level 3, level 3, level 3, all the way down. So it's simply renaming them. I got a little trigger happy, so accidentally just only turned on a single layer. So I go back in here and I'm going to turn on the other layers so you can see that all the information that was on level 2 is now on level 3. There it all is: views, rebar, section cuts, everything. Okay, so now if you did need to do a tweak, it's only going to appear on the drawing files that exist here, not on level 2. Now it's technically at the same location as level 2. So what I do is a simple move command. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a move command. Select everything on plan view. Select a pick point and move it up 10 feet in the Z direction. Okay. Now what it's done is taken everything that exists there, it's moved it up 10 feet, and now I'm going to show you that it's definitely different. It's the same as level 2, but it's in a different location. And I'm only going to turn on, I'm going to turn off all the view information. I'm only going to turn on the concrete and the rebar here, just so you can see how quick and easy that was. So here, it's going to go in, turn on all level 2, turn off level 2 views, which would be technically level 3 views, and go ahead and close that. Now we have 2 levels, identical, same information, same drawing file, same sections, everything, and it's as quick as that. 2 minutes and approximately 40 seconds, and you have a second level with all the same drawing file functionality, all the connectivity. Absolutely. So for people, I mean, obviously you've found us somewhere, but people who are not familiar, we've been around for over 30 years. We're leading provider for AEC software, especially in Europe, and we're just making our headway into the North American marketplace here. Very comprehensive solution. I mean, I'm not going to read what's on there, but for BIM rebar detailers, think about what we have here is the ability to maintain your current workflow, but yet do it and add the functionality of the information inside of a project. And we are a BIM solution, so you want to take that one step further. You have the 3D solution already available to you. We are the founders of OpenBIM. OpenBIM meaning we don't close out our software to anyone who wants to develop something to tap into what we have. That's very, very key. We have 400 plus employees, over 90 countries, 240,000 users. So if you've never heard of us before and think we just knocked on your door yesterday because we are a new software solution, or not, we have quite the extensive user database. So we got some pretty pictures there of some of the rebar detailing that have been done with our software. We from complex structures, the bottom right hand corner, think about the complexity of that, to as simple as putting in a wall in a standard square building. We leave nothing unturned when it comes to that. Post tension capabilities in here as well. So very comprehensive when it comes to rebar detailing. Here's the key. The key to this whole thing, the whole shindagle, previous webinar, this webinar, the next webinar, whatever webinar we host, is we are project-driven file structure. The file structure means we only have to open up one location and all the information about that project is there. Having that drawing file structure internal to your project and being able to segregate that allows for better information handling. It's not segregated, you don't have to span across multiple Excel spreadsheets, it's all within. Lead sorting, the next point here is because it's all within, we have the ability to do what we call all plan share. So you can have multiple users working on that single project on different drawing files, and other people cannot access those drawing files. That is on top of all the enhanced functionality we have. The other productivity gains are because of this project-driven file structure. It makes everyone work better if it's all in one location. So we really want to enhance the fact, not just a detailing tool, but also a managing tool. That's the key to our success here.
Sorry, that brings us to the end of our webinar. I'd just like to again mention that we'll have this webinar in its recorded form on the website next week. I'll be sending out certificates of attendance to everyone who is kind enough to join us today. And I will also send out the recorded version of this webinar via email. So look out for my email. And if you want to get in touch with Dave directly, here's his email address, dbrewster@allplan.com, and his direct line. And he set up a demo, and I'm sure, Dave, you'd be happy to do a personalized demo with anyone who's interested.
Absolutely.
All right.
I do like to thank you all for attending. That we're always excited to show our software off.
Yeah, and look for an invitation to our October webinar. It's going to be fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.